and say it doesn't mean anything. You want to actually get into it and straighten it out.
Investigative reports with Susan Anderson. Nobody does it better. Comedian Ronnie Shell today at 3:30.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
And now, it's time to turn back the clock for a nostalgic look at and listen to the golden age of radio. Today on Noon Break, Chuck Schaden, the king of old-time radio, talks about the stars of radio's greatest era and answers your nostalgia questions at 944-2842. But first, with the news at noon, here is Bob Wallace.
Good afternoon. Topping the news today, the Egyptian cabinet accepts the Israeli-Egyptian peace plan. More Americans are expelled from Iran. The dash for dollars speeds up among mayoral candidates. And yes, Virginia, there are signs of spring, but first our top story. The Egyptian cabinet this morning unanimously approved the Israeli-Egyptian peace package worked out earlier this week with President Carter. That move clears the way for the signing of an actual treaty in Washington, possibly as soon as next week. Now, ever since the details of the peace plan were worked out, Mr. Sadat has remained silent about that plan, that is, until this morning. Doug Sefton reports from Cairo.
President Sadat spent the morning at his Nile-side country villa, talking to advisors, a few government officials, and friends. The Egyptian president has been publicly silent since President Carter departed Egypt for Jerusalem last Saturday. Even as Carter left here for Washington after announcing the dramatic breakthrough in the Middle East impasse, Sadat had nothing to say. Today, during a stroll through the grounds of the presidential rest house, he broke his silence to newsmen.
President Carter, we owe him a lot. So I think this is quite natural that we make the main celebration there in Washington. And especially after the man has done the whole thing, really, in such a marvelous way.
You think you'll be going next week, sir?
Let me hope so, because immediately after the Knesset approves, I think President Carter will be submitting the invitations. But let me tell you this, invited or not invited, I shall be going to Washington.
Do you foresee any difficulties, sir?
Let us hope that there will be no other difficulties, or let me say this, I think we have achieved peace. And thanks to Jimmy.
Thank you, sir.
American feminist Kate Millett is about to be thrown out of Iran. She went there to support Iranian women protesting strict Islamic dress and behavior codes for women. The new rules already have touched off demonstrations throughout the country, as Don Kladstrup reports.
Many Iranian women feel that local broadcast coverage of their equal rights movement amounts to no coverage at all, or at least very little. While newspapers have given wide play to the demonstrations, Iran's radio and television company has given little. Not because of censorship, say officials, but these women don't believe it.
They don't want the girls, the women, go to work. They want to put them just at the home and do housework.
So they protested in front of the company, just hours after another angry woman fired a shot at a car carrying the company's director. He wasn't hurt, but the incident fueled bitter reaction from a lot of men who fear that the women's movement here is nothing more than an attempt to undermine the country's Islamic revolution. They called the women whores, communists, and Savak sympathizers, and several times they had to be restrained. Militiamen armed with rifles and tear gas grenades watched nervously as the two groups pelted each other with obscenities. Lost in the confusion, it seemed, was the reason the women came here in the first place, to protest censorship and express concern about the rights of women under an Islamic republic. No one was injured, but there were a lot of threats and promises by women to stage an even bigger demonstration on Friday.
Censorship is not a new controversy here, but it's likely to become a bigger one as the date for the Islamic referendum approaches. Don Kladstrup, CBS News, Tehran.
Here in Chicago, police are searching for a robber who broke into a hotel room at the Ramada Inn on West Harrison Street this morning, making off with $72,000 worth of jewels. The gems belonged to jewel salesman Abraham Piatowski. He and his wife were awakened about 5 this morning to find the thief rummaging through their belongings. They screamed. The robber fled, taking with him the jewels and about $300 in cash. Piatowski is a salesman for a jewelry company in Pennsylvania. In Chicago politics, Republican leaders from the suburbs say they'll be sending in some of their troops to help mayoral candidate Wallace Johnson in his race against Democrat Jane Byrne. Now, that comes as good news to Johnson, as did a pledge of financial support that he got last night. It happened at the Chicago Boys Club Chicagoan of the Year banquet. John Drummond was there.
If these faces aren't familiar, you don't recognize the cream of Chicago's business and social community. The occasion for the elite gathering was a reception at the Imperial Suite of the Conrad Hilton Hotel. As Charlie Knickerbocker might have said, everybody was there. If banking is your thing, there was Robert Abood of the First National and John Perkins of the Continental. Business tycoons included John Swearingen of Standard Oil on the right, who was accompanied by his lovely wife Bonnie. Exchanging chit-chat with friends was Arthur Rubloff, the real estate baron. Mayor Belandic and Heather showed up, but His Honor did not want to talk to reporters. Honored tonight for his work for the Boys Club was John DeButz, the retiring chairman of the board of AT&T. Another longtime supporter of the Boys Club is Clement Stone, who has in the past been Mr. Got-Rocks to certain GOP candidates. And Stone indicated he's in Wallace Johnson's corner in the upcoming mayoral election. How much is he going to need?
I tell you, if he's going to win, he needs enough to win.
That's what type of money are we talking about?
Well, actually, I'm not in a position to be specific. In addition to other matters, it's a good possibility to work out a matching fund program.
And you are in Mr. Johnson's corner then?
Absolutely.
If you were trying to listen to our sister station, WBBM-FM, this morning, and suddenly it just wasn't there, wasn't your radio causing the problems? BBM-FM and 9 other FM stations lost programming for up to 15 minutes because of a problem at the broadcast antenna at the Jordan Hancock Center. That was all due to some construction near the antenna that caused a shutdown of the system. It's all been fixed, and programming is now back to normal. With the deep freeze hitting us again, you might be wondering if we'll ever see spring here in Chicago. The answer is yes, and Carrie Cochran already has found a few telltale signs of the season.
The fire hydrants are in bloom again, where once they were just signs planted in the snow. And the furniture is springing up all over. Chairs, once used to reserve parking spaces, now blossom on every sidewalk. Even more unusual specimens in this garbage garden can be found peeking through the ice, trash in colors brighter than all the darling buds of May. The streets are literally littered with the surest sign of warm weather, the discarded snow shovel. And children, often the first to appreciate a change of season, are looking for signs of spring in their own way. We found these boys scanning the melting snow piles with a metal detector.
What kind of junk are you finding stuck in the snow?
Everything. Beer cans, beer caps, pop bottle caps, aluminum foil. No money yet, but...
You gonna keep looking?
Yeah.
That makes me feel almost poetic, Harry. Spring is sprung, the grass is riz. I wonder where the flowers is.
Well, I heard one worse than that today. I know why Caesar was shot on this date. Because he was only supposed to eat one, and they said, et tu, brute. Well, if you believe in progression, we're going to have it today. The 30s today, the 40s tomorrow, the 50s on Saturday, and the 60s on Sunday. That's spring-like, isn't it? Sunshine now and warmer weather moving in from the west. Note the 47 here chasing the 10. And so that cold is going to swing off to the east coast where flurries prevail now in the east mountains. Rain coming up in Texas. We might get a little bit of that tomorrow night and early Saturday, but it won't amount to much. And rain on the coast also means a lot of warmer air coming in. And we'll have a little bit here from Marjorie Owen's school in Burbank in a moment. First, the satellite picture, which shows not much cloudiness in the way of the Midwestern region. That whiter stuff to the south part of your picture, and to the left end is the rain coming up from the Gulf. Now this afternoon the skies will be sunny, the winds gentle to light westerly, high 30. Right now the wind chill is 5 above, but it's feeling better every minute. Fair, not so cold tonight, low 23. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy and warmer, up to about 45 to 48 on a beautiful Friday. And the Bulldogs of Marjorie Owen's PTA school we were with last night down in Burbank, Illinois. And here's 2 boutonnieres. Bob, it's right now 22 degrees.
That's a bulldog made out of flowers. At noon on the New York Stock Exchange, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up more than 4 points at 849.70, volume just over 13.5 million shares. That's the news of this hour. I'm Bob Wallace. Lee and I will be back in a moment with more Noon Break, and we'll talk about the golden age of radio with our guest, Chuck Schaden. Stay with us.
For lunch and sandwiches or dinner ideas, Dominic's Deli has Corn King Bologna. It's only 99 cents per pound at Dominic's.
Shop over 60 franchises and distributorships. Attend seminars. Free information about 1,000 businesses for sale. Own your own business show Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at O'Hara Exposition Center, Rosemont.
Final 4 days to save at Carriage House, world's largest Ethan Allen galleries. Arlington Heights, LaGrange, Wheaton.
Now, the new affordable art sale has more paintings, frames, and prints to choose from. New sofa size collection from $29 to $65. Wholesale to the public. Prices far below galleries. The new affordable art sale now features prints by Rockwell, Chagall, Miro, Picasso, and other world-famous artists. Don't miss the new affordable art sale this Sunday from 10 to 5 at the O'Hare Expo Center, Holiday in Ford City, Holiday in Mundelein, and Holiday in Chicago Heights. Check your newspaper for details.
Lamont Cranston, The Shadow, one of the thousands of memories of the golden era of radio, and the era when families really gathered together and used their imagination to create pictures. Well, today on Noon Break, we're going to relive some of those magic moments with our guest, Chuck Schaden. Chuck is a vice president of Northwest Federal Savings and also the host of his own radio show on Saturday afternoon. That's on WNIB-FM. And a man who Gary Deeb once said is the guru of old-time radio. How do you feel being a guru?
It's great.
Terrific. Now, we know about and we hear about the big competition in television, the rating wars going on all the time. Was the competition in radio during that golden era as fierce?
Well, there was a lot of competition. They had, of course, the Crosley ratings and the Hooper ratings, and in the 40s, the comedians always kidded about their Hooper, meaning what their rating was, and they were concerned with ratings. The difference between ratings in those days and today is that in those days, the stations, the networks, and the sponsors expressed more confidence in the product that they put out. By that, I mean they would let you be exposed to a radio show for a longer period of time before they said, no, nobody wants to listen to it. If they said, let's have this show on and let's do a 39-week season, they were committed to that. They wouldn't pull it off at the end of 3 weeks if they thought the show was in trouble. They'd work with the show. They'd get the writers together and the talent together, and they'd try to work with it and keep it going.
So people had a better chance.
Sure. Consequently, the shows lasted for 12 years.
Did they use as much audience research, or was it more seat of the pants?
No, they used audience research. I don't think it was as technical as it is today. Today, it's all with computers, and they get the printouts and they get the whole business. But they used to test the audience by the sales of the product and by the mail that would come in. Because in the days of radio, most of the radio shows were owned not by the networks, but by the sponsors. Kraft Music Hall, for example, when that was on, it was not a show from the National Broadcasting Company. It was owned by Kraft, and it was produced by their advertising agency, and they did their thing with it.
And Lux Radio Theater.
Lux Radio Theater. Right. Well, that was, of course, a great trick on radio to use the name of the sponsor in the program, so that
got a double
you
plug.
always said Philco radio time. You know.
Well, you always thought of things. I mean, you thought of Jack Armstrong and Wheaties, right? Yeah. And Bob Hope and Pepsodent.
And Tom Mix and Ralston.
That's correct.
Right. Very
but that
good.
you see again.
The Lone Ranger and Cheerios.
That's right. Well, before Cheerios.
You got me there.
Oh, Silver Cup bread.
That's right.
Who?
Silver Cup bread.
Silver Cup. I never even heard of Silver Cup bread.
Oh, come on.
I grew up in the East, so maybe.
You know why? That is the fact that Silver Cup bread sponsored the Lone Ranger is directly responsible. They was the first sponsor, and that's why the Lone Ranger had a horse named Silver, and he used silver bullets
Oh,
Really?
His hideout was a secret silver mine.
The sponsor really ran things.
Aren't you glad he wasn't sponsored by Buttercup? Butternut?
His horse would be called Nut Nut.
Hi-ho, Butternut.
Shoot nuts at people.
All right. What were some, let's say, the 5 top shows?
Jack Benny, Fibber, Mcgee, and Molly.
Go slower. Jack Benny, why? Because the humor
Why?
was so good?
Oh, well, the writing
Everything.
was incredible.
Wow.
And everybody was, you know, Jack Benny was a consummate comedian. And he did not, Jack Benny had very few gags of his own. He hardly ever gave a punchline. All the comedy was about Jack. All his cast, Dennis Day and Rochester and Phil Harris and Mary Livingston, all of those people, they had the gag lines, and Jack was the butt of all of the jokes. And his character, his personality was so keenly developed over the years that you could just look at Jack Benny and know what his response was going to be. Or hear a line on radio given to Jack Benny. You know, the famous Jack Benny line was, the hold-up man pointing the gun at Jack Benny, saying, "Your money or your life," followed by a long pause, and the audience gets hysterical. And you know what the problem is, and Jack finally says, "I'm thinking it over."
All right, now, you mentioned, Chuck, about the Philco radio. I think we're lucky to have this here today, don't you?
That's a oldie, yeah.
It is, but it brings back lots of memories. So why don't we just turn it on and see what happens?
Okay.
Well, here he is again, Fred Allen.
Thank you. You know what? Well, of course. Well, what's the good word tonight, Portland?
Mama said the end of your program was cut off last week.
I know, but like a snake, it wiggled until sundown. I must... Tell me, was your mother upset?
No. Mama said with your program, you can cut it off any place.
Especially for you, North Riverside Park. Especially now, North Riverside Park. Especially nice. Yes, we all know what we're to do. Make sure that the park is especially for you. North Riverside Park. Especially for you.
We're talking about old-time radio with Chuck Schaden. If you'd like to call us and get a question on the air, give us a call at 944-2842. I feel like I should be doing this with a handover like this and say, Chuck, what were the other 4 of the top 5 rated shows?
Well, we said Jack Benny was one of the top. And they fluctuated a little bit in the first 5 positions, but not much. They were always there. Fibber, Mcgee, and Molly, one of the top of the radio shows.
Yeah.
Started in 1936 and was on through the 1950s. People remember the old-timer coming over and little Teeny, the little girl who used to say, "Hi, mister." And, of course, they opened the hall closet and all the junk would come out. Never could do that on television. They did it in a couple of movies, tried to do it on a very, very short-lived TV series. It didn't work because your imagination was working. The closet wasn't as full on television as it was in your imagination when you opened it at Fibber's house.
As you're doing that, tell us quickly the years of the golden age of television.
I consider the golden age of radio to be from about 1935 to about 1955. Only 20 years.
Okay, so now we've got Jack Benny, Fibber, Mcgee, and Molly.
Right. Amos and Andy.
Oh.
Freeman Gosden and Charles Correll. I mean, they were so popular that people stopped doing everything when they were on the radio. Movie houses advertised on their marquees that they would stop the picture and tune in Amos and Andy and then resume the picture after the show. And they'd bring in a big old console radio on the stage and turn it on, and people would listen.
After them, what was the next one?
Then we had Bob Hope was very, very popular. And, of course, this is Bob broadcasting from the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, Hope, telling you that if you brush your teeth with Pepsodent, and so on, with Jerry Colonna and Vera Vague. And Hope was very, very big and tremendous personality on radio, and, of course, today on TV, too. And the Lux Radio Theater. Lux presents Hollywood, and Cecil B. DeMille and later William Keighley would introduce hour-long radio versions of popular movies with the stars that were in the movies themselves. I mean, we had Cary Grant and
big stars,
somebody like that right on the show doing the program.
Could we quickly do some of these questions from the audience at home? Nancy of Niles, what happened to Dick York, who used to be the Brewster Man?
The Brewster boy, he was. He grew up and became the Brewster man. That Brewster boy, Dick York played on Bewitched on television.
Samantha's husband, yeah.
He was Samantha's husband for a while, and he's, I believe, still doing some things in television, radio, voiceover work.
What happened to the little quiz kids?
The little quiz kids grew up and became big quiz kids, right.
Ask a stupid question.
Joel Kupperman, the most popular of the quiz kids, is a professor at an Eastern university now. Stays absolutely away from any kind of interest in him as a former quiz kid. Lon Lundy, who was one of the quiz kids in the Chicago, all the show came from Chicago now. He's a musician, and he's working out in the Glenview area these days. You can go to a restaurant out there called the Ark, and you can meet Lon Lundy and ask him a lot of questions about the quiz kids.
Right. Okay, Marge from Marionette Park. When did One Man's Family leave the air, and how long was it on?
Well, One Man's Family left the air in the mid, I think the early to middle 50s. It started in the late 30s. It was on 15 minutes a night for a long, long time, many, many years. Then it went to a sequence where they had a 30-minute show once a week. And Father Barber and Mother Barber and all the members of the Barber family. It was one of the most best-loved programs, created by Carlton E. Morris, who also created I Love a Mystery.
Now, Chuck, as long as we have this Philco radio here on television, let's turn it on again and see what comes out, all right? Here we go.
Johnson Wax program with Fibber, McGee, and Molly. The makers of Johnson's Wax and Johnson's Self-Polishing Glow Coat present Fibber, McGee, and Molly, written by Don Quinn, with music by the King's Men and Billy Mills Orchestra. What is so rare as a day in spring in Wistful Vista, with Mrs. McGee sitting reading on the porch, her husband picking weeds out of the lawn.
Out of the thousands of wallpaper designs worldwide, we at the Papery at Saxon choose only the best. And now out of the best, we chose the best of the best and put them on sale. These 50 top patterns are marked down $2 to $5 a bolt below our everyday low prices. If you've never wallpapered before, we'll show you how. Our wallpapers are all in stock, so run down to the Papery, where you can save $2 to $5 a bolt. The Papery is at your neighborhood Saxon store.
Saxon, the real paint and wallpaper experts.
Meet the Mississippi minister and his tiny band of followers who are trying to clean up sex on television. And find out why TV's game shows have been controlled for so long by so few. All in the new issue of TV Guide. Look for Mike Farrell and Alan Alda on the cover.
Hi, Golden Richards here. For the best selection, guarantees, and prices on comfortable Lazy Boys, come to Lazy Boy Showcase Shops.
Chuck Schaden of WNIB Radio is with us today, and in addition to hosting his own program on Saturday afternoon, Chuck is also the editor of Nostalgia Newsletter, a monthly program guide for old-time radio programs. Now, Ann, would you stand up? You have a question for Chuck.
I had numerous favorites, but the one in particular, Mert and Marge, I was just wondering if they're still living.
No, I think they're both gone now. Mert and Marge were mother and daughter. They were sisters on radio, but they were really mother and daughter. And the characters' names were Myrtle Spears and Marjorie Minter, and they were sponsored by Wrigley's. So again, you get the sponsor identification in there. Myrtle Spears and Marjorie Minter.
I love it.
Beautiful. What's that?
Yes. I was wondering, is Jack Benny and all them, you know, is it going to come back on again, you know, just the previews of it?
Well, you mean the radio Jack Benny show? Well, we try to play a lot of Jack Benny programs on Those Were the Days show every Saturday afternoons on WNIB. As a matter of fact, Jack Benny's birthday month is February, and of course, if he were alive, he would have been celebrating his 39th birthday last February. So we spent a whole month of playing nothing but Jack Benny radio appearances, and so we try to do a lot of things. We'll have an Easter show with Jack Benny, too.
While you're on that subject, a listener wants to know our old shows, especially kid shows like Cinnamon Bear. Are they on cassettes or records people can buy?
Yeah. Cinnamon Bear and many of the old shows are available on cassettes and on records and on 8-track tape. And I can even tell you where you can find them.
I bet I know. Go ahead.
We have a nostalgia shop called Metro Golden Memories. And it's at 5941 West Irving Park Road at Austin Avenue. And we're open every day of the week, and we have hundreds of the old radio shows on record and tape.
I've been up there. It's a wild place.
Is it?
Yeah.
It looks like more and more dramatic things are coming back to radio. Do you foresee an increase in that constantly?
Oh, yeah. Well, we just started this last couple of, several weeks ago, the CBS radio network is starting to carry the new Sears Radio Theater 5 nights a week, and it's on WBBM radio here, the WBBM Air Theater, you know, at 8:30 every night. So you can get brand new radio stories, and they have westerns and comedy and mystery and adventure and all kinds of things. And then, of course, at 10:30 every night on CBS is the CBS Radio Mystery Theater that's been going on for 5 or 6 years now.
Okay, your question?
In the Burns and Allen show, did Gracie drop out because of the great stress of the show?
Well,
yeah.
Well, she stayed in the radio show from the entire run of the series.
Yeah.
And then when they went to television, she was getting tired of doing it. She had worked all of her life from being a very young girl in vaudeville with George Burns, and she just wanted to relax a little bit. And George didn't, so he continued trying to do some things. And of course, now he's God, so what more can we have?
Your question.
Hi, Chuck. I know you're about to celebrate your 9th anniversary on the air coming up in May, and I was just wondering if during that past time you've ever had sort of a tearjerker afternoon, basically where you did a whole series of the old soap operas. Those are the things that I remember as a kid coming home from lunch. Wendy Warren with the news, and Our Gal Sunday, Helen Trent, all those things, and Ma Perkins, of course. Have you ever done anything like that or had any plans for such a thing?
Yes, we have, and we probably will do something like that again. Our Gal Sunday, the story of a girl from a mining town out west who found happiness with rich and handsome Lord Henry Brinthrope, and Ma Perkins and Mary Noble, backstage wife, and the romance of Helen Trent. She was trying to find happiness if she could be 35 years of old, if she would be happy at that late age in life.
Did Helen Trent ever find happiness?
No.
Never
She just
did.
kept looking
She's still
for it,
looking,
though.
right?
Story would have gone on.
She's still out looking. I don't think so. Oh, I would.
She's still out there looking.
Even if she were killed, I wouldn't accept it. I wouldn't accept it.
Chuck, how many of the radio programs made a successful leap into television?
Well, there were quite a few of the radio shows. Mostly the ones that depended on a strong personality who played himself or themselves. The people who played characters on radio didn't always make an easy transition because the characters they played were not, they didn't portray them as you portrayed them by using your imagination. Abbott and Costello made a fairly decent transition to television. Burns and Allen did. Jack Benny did. Arthur Godfrey did. Now, Arthur Godfrey was not a person who was he was not a dramatic actor. He was a personality, but he made an easy transition to radio,
right,
from
Chuck,
radio to TV.
You've talked about a lot of radio shows today, and some of them were drama, some comedy. One of them that you mentioned was the big comedy show, stars this man, Jack Benny.
Program starring Jack Benny with Barry Livingston, Phil Harris, Rochester, Dennis Day, and yours truly, Don Wilson.
We'd like to thank Chuck Schaden for being with us today. It was fun, wasn't it, Bob?
Yes, Lee, it was.
Thank you, audience, for joining us. And be sure to be with us tomorrow when we'll be talking about victims of crime. So watch them and stay safe. Bye-bye. Thank you for being with us.
Nobody does it better than Channel 2. Bill Curtis.